Greetings to all true boxing fans. This is a preliminary prediction for the fight between Saul Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford. This matchup is extremely interesting. Now, I said that I would analyze both athletes ruthlessly. Why? The thing is, I'm a huge fan of Terence Crawford. I really like his boxing style. At the same time, a lot of people call me a Canelo hater. In part, that's true. I really don't like Canelo. But Canelo is a good boxer, and it would be silly to deny that. He has great boxing technique. It's just that I think Canelo's actual level is overrated. And what Canelo gets, he basically takes all the cream off the top in boxing. So who do we have? Alexander Usyk, Anthony Joshua. Fortunately, he's been knocked out of the picture now, and the Gypsy King is also, thankfully, retiring. And then there's Canelo. Basically, all the money is centered around them. And what Canelo has, the way he's valued. Yeah, in fact, even Usyk gets matched with the toughest possible opponents. But he just beats them. I'll say it right away. Guys, I'm not a Usyk fan, but the best opponents they could possibly give him, he's beaten them. Whether you like it or not. Canelo, in my opinion, gets, well, basically, they handpick his opponents for him at just the right time, at the right weight, and so on. So, I think he's not a real boxer. That's my opinion. But despite that, I'll try to analyze as objectively and strictly as possible. And we'll try to figure out, what are Canelo's trump cards? What does he have that could allow him to beat Terence Crawford? And on the other hand, does Terence Crawford actually have a real chance to win? If he does, whether those chances are big or small, what are they hypothetically based on? Basically, we're going to break all of this down. First of all, there's the weight. The fight hasn't been officially announced yet, so the weight class isn't set either. But insiders are saying the fight will take place entirely in Canelo's weight class. That's super middleweight, which is 76.2 kilograms. Crawford's weight is 69.9 kilograms. So for Crawford, that means he'll have to put on at least 6 kilograms, which is 2 weight classes up. And even that 69 kilogram weight is actually a lot for Crawford, because he's only had one fight at that weight, against Israel Madrimov. And many people think that Crawford didn't look good in that weight class, that he didn't box as well as he did before at 66.7 kilograms. But then again, maybe that's actually thanks to Israel Madrimov. We need to be objective here. So for Crawford, that's plus 6 kilograms, or maybe even plus 10 kilograms. That's a really big difference in weight. And here's the most interesting part. What does that actually lead to? Everyone always says you have to respect the weight. That's a common saying in boxing. Like, there's a reason weight classes exist. But how does it actually work in reality? Look, there are two factors that determine how weight makes a difference. If the skill levels are different, then obviously a smaller boxer can beat a bigger one, and vice versa. But when both are technical fighters, then it turns out that punching power really does depend on weight. But what kind of punch are we talking about? If it's a single knockout punch, like it could be any punch, even a jab, when Crawford puts all his energy into it, and he knows he's going to land it, and then, bam, he puts everything into that shot. We put him in a safe position and let his combinations look sharp. A very heavy punch. So Crawford has that kind of single, sniper-like punch, even though he weighs less. But I get the feeling that he might even hit harder than Canelo.
A fast, explosive jab.
Well, or about the same. But the problem is, most punches in boxing, well, to put it simply, it's a war of jabs. So, when you come together, you still can't quite reach each other, but you can already poke your opponent with your lead hand. That jab, forward-backward, maybe throw a hook on the way out, or catch him with an uppercut. Basically, it's a jab war. There are no power punches. And that's where weight really starts to matter. Again, though, it depends on technique. So, if you have great technique, and your opponent has some flaws that cause him to lose power in his punches, then yes, you can be stronger. But when both are masters, and we have to admit, they're both technical fighters, even if one weighs less but is more explosive, the other will still have something going for him too. So if he's not as explosive, that means he's more enduring. In short, talent really does make a difference. And especially when we're talking about a jab war, like when a knockout, you can land a light punch or even hit harder, but it all adds up. Jab, 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 back and forth. Those kinds of punches that cover a lot of ground. And when one athlete weighs 10 kilograms more, or even 6 or 7 more, it really does make a difference. So that's the first thing. The second point, which is less obvious, is the athlete's width. From the outside, it might not always be clear what I mean, but this is just my own theory. Well, I'm absolutely confident in it. Athletes who are broader, whose mass is distributed properly, and I mean functional mass, real boxing, working mass. Width gives you speed of movement. So what does that mean? I realized this clearly for the first time myself. Well, I'm tall and skinny. Once, I sparred with a really good heavyweight. He's shorter than me. And it's not like he's huge or anything. I mean, he weighed just under 90 kilos. He's really compact, with powerful legs and a strong torso. And so, what did I realize? That he's wider than me across, significantly wider. And his movement speed is completely different. Like, he can get closer or farther away on his feet, just like that. Again, it's all about how he uses his lower back, leaning forward. So, one thing is hand speed. Your power, in a way, doesn't really matter there. It's all about fast twitch muscle fibers, how quick you are, and your technique. But it's a whole different thing when you're moving your entire body, all that mass. Like shifting forward, shifting back. And here's what I realized. Someone who's leaner, more narrow, when it comes to moving their whole body, it's like a kind of power speed, I guess. But when you need to apply a lot of force really quickly, he just kind of loses out. So basically, the broader someone is, all other things being equal, the more impressive he is, in short. Meaning, he's closer, farther away. Let's remember some fights. Teofimo Lopez versus Vasily Lomachenko. I mean, their size. Well, their height isn't that different. Their arm length isn't that different either. But Teofimo, he's built like a tank, really broad, while Vasily is slimmer. So, hand speed is one thing, but when it comes to moving the whole body, because of his width, he can shift faster in a way. And he can't be hung back against the hands, is that right? And this also leads to the fact that, all else being equal, when the technique is comparable, when the talent is comparable, both are stars, then the one with the greater reach should totally dominate the jab battle. And well, first of all, he hits harder there. There's an accumulative effect. And secondly, his body. When we're not just talking about the arms, but the whole body, closer, farther, legs, hips, lower back, core muscles, he's broader across, and those muscles are functional for him. So he's faster. He's generally from a narrower, more slender, lighter weight class. He should be outpacing them. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, watch Sergey Kovalev's fight. He has 1 or 2 fights there. I don't remember exactly. Check out when he moved up to cruiserweight. That's plus 10 kilos. So you can see right away. Please understand me correctly. You can immediately see the difference between Sergey Kovalev when it's not his weight class and a real cruiserweight. A big punch, like we saw on Thursday. Willpower from both of them. Foggy. Even for someone who's the same height. So Sergey Kovalev, he's got the technique, he's got the punch, he can rotate his shoulders, put his weight into it, but his build is kind of softer. He's not a real cruiserweight, a broad cruiserweight, you know, the kind with functional muscles and a wide frame. He's heavy. The speed is completely different there, the movement, the rigidity of the build, it's all different. So of course, that plays a role. Those are the 2 main advantages of Saul Canelo Alvarez. There's also the fact that Terence Crawford is a knockout boxer. He rarely ever pulled off miracles on points. He's had a lot of fights go to the judges, and sometimes he even lost or drew against pretty average, ordinary opponents. But then he would knock them out. to be continued. It's believed that Canelo is unbreakable, that he's basically impossible to knock out, that he's taken every punch. And if you look at it from this perspective, again, we've seen examples like this in boxing. The knockout artist Deontay Wilder went up against the Gypsy King. The Gypsy King, even though I'm not a fan of Fury again, he took Wilder's punches, and that was it. That was the end of Wilder's boxing. So there's also this effect that can happen. Crawford is a knockout artist, a clear-cut knockout puncher who catches you with a single shot, going up against someone who can take any punch. That also works in Alvarez's favor. Now, let's look at what works in Crawford's favor. First of all, there's height and reach. So, even though they're in different weight classes and there's a big weight difference, their height is the same, which is a huge advantage. Because when you move up in weight, like Mikey Garcia did, and you end up facing someone like Errol Spence, and you're also shorter, that's just a total disaster. That means you have to get in close, attack, move in and out. In other words, you have to do a lot more work. But here, you're the same height. So that's another point in Terence Crawford's favor. Another thing is that the fight won't happen for a while. It's still 8 months away. If the fight were in 2 or 3 months, I think it would be lights out for Crawford, because you'd be at your absolute best. And I think Crawford, well, anyway, these tests now, they're really tough. It's really hard to put on weight these days. Why is everyone so impressed with Usyk? Partly because of the era he's fighting in. Back in Holyfield's days, it was a different time. There wasn't really any proper doping control. It was pretty much a joke. But now everything is pretty strict, and it's really hard to put on quality weight, right? So it's good that there are 8 months for that. So Crawford, theoretically, can spend all 8 months training consistently, and basically, he needs to bulk up pretty much everything except his arms. That means his legs, his pull strength, jumps, abs, lower back, and core muscles. In other words, he needs to become powerful. His arms will be fine no matter what. He needs to work on everything except his arms, his whole body, so he can get broader and, more importantly, so that width is functional. Honestly, that's really hard, almost impossible. Usyk managed to do it too. I don't know how, but he did it. So Crawford is facing the same challenge. So he needs to put on quality mass. The good thing is, he has a whole 8 months to do it. That's also in his favor. Another thing about knockout power. Look, on the one hand, what do we see? That Canelo can take any punch. But who has actually hit him? I mean, who has really hit him? Bivol hit him. By the way, Bivol hits a lot harder than you might think. And what's good is that he throws counter punches. Those are exactly the kind of punches that can knock someone out. Gennady Golovkin also hit Canelo really hard, but the problem is that Golovkin almost never throws counter punches. In other words, he attacks himself. Mostly, he throws hooks. So there's no accumulation of energy. I mean, Golovkin hits hard. There's also another point. Golovkin, overall, hits in our style. That is, it's not necessarily that he throws one incredibly hard punch. Golovkin doesn't have weak punches. All his punches are pretty strong. Oh, a large number. But Crawford is a sniper. He concentrates all his energy into a single punch. I think maybe even more than Gennady Golovkin. That's one thing. And two, Gennady Golovkin mostly throws punches from below or from the side. So those aren't counter punches, and you can see them coming. But Crawford throws counter punches. So it's a combination of energies. Sleep happened. Okay, things have consequences in her form. So if Canelo moves forward, it's possible that Terence will catch him on the counter, just like he usually gets his knockouts. A combination of energies. And that's where the danger becomes even greater. Now, will Canelo move forward or not? Look, theoretically, he could move forward. Why? Because he'll be under, basically, pressure from the audience, the audience's expectations. Why? Because, for example, Israel Madrimov didn't move forward against Crawford. And by the way, we discussed this back then on the private channel even before the fight. that the Madrimov versus Crawford fight could turn out to be much more competitive than people expect. That is, if Israil Madrimov doesn't rush in, which he usually does, making those sudden lunges at Crawford. Although, for example, I thought he would rush in and end up getting knocked out. But he showed a lot of discipline, didn't charge forward, moved ahead very moderately, while Crawford spent the whole fight waiting to catch him coming in, but Israil never did. So in the end, there was no knockout. And here's where there's a big difference. The thing is, Israil was already coming in as the clear underdog, and the boxing crowd didn't really see the fighters as equals. From the start, it was like Terence Crawford comes out, the fight is set up for him, he's the superstar. And Israil comes out basically, well, to put it bluntly, just so they can take the belt from him. So he was really coming in as a huge underdog. And that's why, when Israil Madrimov not only managed to go the distance, but also showed cautious boxing and kept the score pretty close, maybe even close to a draw, that was impressive. But what's the difference here? Here, it's actually the opposite. Terence Crawford is the one coming in as the underdog. That is, he's moving up 2 weight classes, 6 kilograms, but in reality, it's almost 10 kilograms. He's moving up to face Canelo. So, if in that previous fight Crawford was the big deal and no one expected much from Israil, in this fight it's the opposite, the smaller. So to speak, Crawford is moving up in weight to face the king of that division, Canelo. And accordingly, everyone will be expecting action from Canelo. And if Canelo acts too cautiously, too calculated, like Vladimir Klitschko, just waiting for something from a distance, then a lot of people won't get it. I mean, the crowd maybe, again, I don't know. If the fight takes place in Saudi Arabia, obviously, everyone there will just politely stay quiet. But even when people watch it on TV, a lot of them will be booing, like, you're the bigger guy, go hit the little guy. So what are you waiting for? What are you afraid of? And if Canelo does go forward, which, by the way, I'm not so sure about, then yeah, Crawford actually has some chances to catch him. There are also 2 other interesting points. One is that Terence Crawford switches stances. And if you look, Canelo has had the most trouble. Well, aside from Dmitry Bivol. But that was a whole different story because of the size difference, when he's fighting someone in a southpaw stance. Take a look at Canelo's fight against Daniel Jacobs. Daniel Jacobs mostly boxes as an orthodox fighter. Sometimes he switches to southpaw. And when he switched to southpaw, that's exactly when he landed his hardest shots on Alvarez. There's a lot of evidence for this, and you can see it, for example, in the fight against Baku's own big south punch. That is, specifically from the southpaw stance. And Terence Crawford boxes from both stances. He can switch stances smoothly and subtly. So he'll read you from one stance, check out all the angles, and then bam! He'll switch up and show you something without you even noticing. And then, boom! Right. From the southpaw stance. So, he really knows how to box as a southpaw. Launching left-hand back shot hook. And actually, the most troublesome punches Canelo took, from Jacobs, for example, were from the southpaw stance. That's another thing to note. And one more thing I wanted to discuss. How can Crawford beat Alvarez? The thing we were talking about. The jab war, so mass matters. Meaning, a single punch can be decisive. Okay, anyone can land a hard shot. But those lighter punches throughout the fight, the ones that just graze or land on the surface, they add up, little by little. Each time, he pushes you back a little more, knocks you off balance a bit more with his weight, right? But the thing is, there are 2 types of defense. There's the kind where you block the punch with a guard, like a tight defense, using your forearms, your elbows if it's to the body, right? To the forehead. So, one way or another, you're taking the hit, and those punches, they get through to you. That is, the energy transfers, and when he's heavier or bigger, he pushes you back with those punches. But there's also a second type of defense, slipping, ducking, leaning back, or using distance to defend yourself. So basically, when a punch misses you, it really doesn't matter who's throwing it. In that case, weight stops being important. So, logically, Crawford's goal should be to avoid contact boxing as much as possible, to not trade punches back and forth. That means using as little tight defense as possible, blocking as little as possible, and taking as few body shots on the elbows as possible. Ideally, when fighting Canelo, you want to, well, basically, you want to make his punches miss you, not absorb them. So, what does that look like in practice, and what can be adjusted? Look, for example, when there's a jab exchange, people often throw jabs while using their other hand to block. So, they throw the jab, but at the same time, they cover themselves with their right hand for protection. In this case, Crawford needs to fully extend and avoid any contact at all, like, I don't know, throwing a punch with a sidestep, slipping inside or outside. So what does that mean? Let me show you. I'll do it right into the camera so it's clear. It means you shouldn't throw a punch in a way where you end up taking the second punch yourself. Basically, you should either punch and move down so the punch goes over you, or, on the contrary, move the other way so it passes by here. Basically, like in the Matrix. In other words, so that the bullets don't touch you at all. And in this case, if you do it right, then mass, basically, matters a lot less. But again, that's just in theory. Now, let's talk about reality. Honestly, I have a rather pessimistic outlook. I think Terence Crawford is facing too big of a challenge. And right now, at least at this moment as I'm recording this video, I see very little chance for Crawford. Pretty much almost zero, really. So I think he's going to lose, basically, because of all the factors we've discussed. Thank you for watching this video. Once again, if you want to support me and get a lot more content, subscribe to the private channel. You can do it from any country, with any bank card, even with cryptocurrency. All the best to everyone. See you next time. Turning off the camera.